Evening, Cherries fans, and welcome to this very special opposition preview show here on Up the Cherries in all departments. Before I do welcome in my special guest, here's a little bit about our sponsors, Dental on the Banks. To find out what they can do for you, visit dentalonthebanks.co.uk. So, following our 4-0 defeat up at the Etihad, which was partly expected, let's be fair, against Manchester City, following on from a fantastic win against Aston Villa at home, we are back to home comforts against Arsenal. Arsenal have got 6 points from their first two opening games in the Premier League under Mikel Arteta. Now, to welcome on my special guest for this show, let's be honest. When somebody says the words Arsenal to you and YouTube, you think of one particular channel. Yeah, Arsenal Fan TV. You know the stars of the show, Robbie, Turkish, James. It is a pleasure to welcome onto the show from Arsenal Fan TV, James. Evening, James. How are you?
Yeah, very good, Craig. How are you?
Yeah, very, very well. And thank you so much for coming on the show. And we were saying just before this show started as well, one of my favorite, and it's to be fair, it's the only channel that I subscribe to of another club because you guys are just so entertaining, like Robbie, Turkish, yourself. I'm sure I've missed people out. I'm sure they're going to probably be cursing me. But yeah, how did
No,
it all come about?
thank you so much. Honestly, I really, really appreciate that. Thank you for, all the support and everything. Yeah, it really means a lot.
How did Arsenal Fan TV come about? Because it gets so big.
Yeah, well, it's funny because I was only really, I've been around nearly 2 years. So I joined October 2020, and it's, I think essentially, there was that kind of gap between fans, obviously, having the match day experience, pundits and people in media having their say on what was going on, and there was this grey area, this in between, where actually fans who followed their club here, there, and everywhere, wanted to have their say, and that's exactly what Robbie was. He was on the road. He was watching Arsenal. He had the frustrations others had, but he was also there for all the highs as well. There's that kind of it's gone around the internet now, that kind of clip of, I can't remember who it was, celebrating a goal at Highbury, and you can see Robbie in the background, either watching the game or celebrating. I can't remember whether it was during a goal or not, but and so he's kind of been there for the highs and the lows, and he wanted to give people the opportunity to have their say. And since then it's grown, and then I came on board in October, and I've never looked back. I've had the best time. Arsenal have been on a steady upward trajectory since then, very steady, with some lows, but generally it's been great fun. And even during the lows, I've found it fairly therapeutic, in fairness. So yeah, it's been very good.
Excellent stuff. Well, let's just hope you guys actually find the right Bournemouth ground this time, because I remember there was a video where Robbie had pulled up and found the wrong park. didn't he? He found
Oh,
Bournemouth Poppies instead of Dean Court. So
oh
yeah,
wow. Oh right,
if
yeah.
if
You don't want to get
Robbie
those ones.
if Robbie wants directions, yeah, just come to me. Just let us know.
Oh yes, yeah. I'm sure he'll be in touch. I'm not actually sure who's going that day. I think it might be Robbie who's going on the day. But he says it's a great trip and he's really looking forward to it.
Yeah, awesome stuff. Yeah, and it's going to be great to actually see him back at Dean Court and see Arsenal back at Dean Court. We're delighted to be back. Of course, 2 wins from the first 2 games, and Mr. Patrick Vieira has actually tipped Arsenal to be title contenders this year.
Oh yeah.
Do you agree with him, or do you think he's just saying that because he loves the club?
Well, I mean, listen, first and foremost, I didn't go into this season with any realistic hope that we could challenge or win a title because Arsenal have been so far off it for so many years. That's not to say that the club standards shouldn't be there. And Patrick Vieira, if there's ever a man who epitomises sort of standards and success at Arsenal and commitment and all that, and it's Patrick Vieira. So you always listen when a legend like him speaks. I don't know whether, listen, it could be multiple things. Either that's just his mindset. Arsenal are a club that challenge for the title and will always be in my mind. Or he saw something in that first performance that genuinely impressed him. Sometimes you hear what players and managers have to say about certain teams, and they don't always reflect what the fans think. And sometimes you're taken aback, or you think maybe they're saying it for a particular reason, but often it's actually because in the heat of it, in the actual game, in it, they've have a different flavour from it. So with what Palace did against Liverpool the other day, by the way, I thought Liverpool were quite good. I actually think it aided Arsenal in terms of, showing how good it was to go to Selhurst and yes, ride some moments, but actually be generally quite comfortable and play some really good football and have quite a good few chances throughout the game. So maybe he's just looking at that 2 wins out of 2. Only City have done the same and thinking that's where I've got to judge them. But it's too far for me in terms of a realistic expectation. But listen, I love it. And the expectation is that Arsenal should have won those first 2 games and did. So we build from there.
And of course, you have got a former City striker in Gabriel Jesus, who has done very, very well so far. Could his knowledge help you, overcome Man City?
So we've seen 2 little micro bits of evidence of where the Man City kind of mentality comes in. Firstly, at Selhurst, where we were under the cosh, and Arsenal got through it. Now, in fairness, Arsenal got through quite a few like that last season. Leicester away, Villa away, Bournemouth away, never easy places to go. Got through all of them. Watford away, even though he scored a few goals, conceded a few. We got through and got the 3 points. So Arsenal have shown an ability to grind out a few wins on a few occasions. But it was more that in the Crystal Palace game, we also had something going the other way. We weren't just sitting back. There was a degree of counter-attack. There's a degree of actually Arsenal might be able to exploit the open space, blah, blah. And I think that comes from Jesus' relentless pressing. And despite, having a goal and protecting what we've got, he still wants to score. And then I think in the Leicester game, you saw it manifest itself in a different way in that, we had a couple setbacks against Leicester, 2-0 up to 2-1, and then 3-1 up to 3-2. And both times Arsenal bounced back and within a minute, regained a 2-goal lead. So in both those occasions, what you saw was Arsenal not flustering, under the pressure of conceding a goal and maybe giving themselves a nervy 30, 20, 10 minutes, and Arsenal just getting the job done by finding another goal and going again. And so I think in those kind of small ways, we've seen where Zinchenko, Jesus, I think Saliba as well, it's just naturally in his nature. They don't get fussed by these kind of things. So hopefully that's a trend that continues, because I've got no doubt that Bournemouth will put us under the cosh again.
Yeah, and I think, from when we was last in the Premier League to now, I think Scott Parker has changed things up. He's the side did play very, very well against Aston Villa and played well against Man City the other day as well.
Yeah.
Comparing the Eddie Howe Bournemouth and the Scott Parker Bournemouth from what you've seen so far,
Hmm.
do you think we can replicate what we did last time round, or do you think it's going to be more difficult with more money? And has the Premier League got stronger?
I really liked Eddie Howe, and I'm glad he's doing what he's doing at Newcastle. I think he's sort of showing the world. For some reason, people were scared to touch him after Bournemouth. I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
There was a time where he had a reputation, maybe somewhat in the same mould as Graham Potter, and then for whatever reason, maybe the relegation, maybe the fact that it just went a little bit stale at Bournemouth, but he didn't have the biggest funds. So he spent some money. Don't get me wrong. I'm not, it's a very lazy narrative to go, well, Bournemouth had no money. They spent some, but the fact was he was competitive and pulled out big results and was able to go toe to toe, playing really good football against the big guys, and that's what I really liked about him. And the reason I say that is because even having Arteta now, often we're not able to always go toe to toe with the big guns and get draws or wins, because ultimately when you go punch for punch, they normally prevail. But Eddie Howe always sort of had an ability to get you through those big games and have some really good seasons. Am I right in thinking he got you ninth at one season? Or
He did, yeah, in the second season. So
right.
a couple of people even said, well, could be second season syndrome. That was always the word. I'm sure people have said that about Brentford this year. But we finished ninth, which was a great achievement.
And you had some great players, and players I really enjoyed watching. I think. Look, I'm not going to pretend to have watched lots of Bournemouth under Scott Parker. I believe he's only been there 1 year, isn't it? This is his second. So,
Yes.
got you guys promoted immediately. That in itself, well done. When I saw Scott Parker at Fulham, he struck me as a guy who, when he took on the job, knew what he wanted to do. When he got the promoted, knew what he wanted to do. And then when he came into the Premier League, kind of realised, well, I can't go for punch, so I have to adapt a little bit, but didn't necessarily have the players to do it. And I think was just a little bit confused by what he wanted to kind of be in that role. I would like to think of Bournemouth, not that Scott Parker would ever need to listen to my advice, but I guess it'd be if he kind of sticks to what he does best. I've got no doubt Bournemouth can have a successful season. What does success look like to you? Is it, without me sounding ignorant about it, is it just staying up? Is it about actually kicking on and doing a little bit of what Brentford did last year?
I think success in my mind would probably be 17th this year.
Sure.
But then moving forwards from there, moving, up the table bit by bit. We don't expect to, have an amazing season like we did in the second season. We was last here, but I think 17th would be an achievement considering where we come from, the strength of the Premier League now, and I'm confident we can do that. We might finish 16th, 17th, but 17th, is that's a successful season for me.
And does that come with, because when everyone asks me, well, what's your target for Arsenal? The easiest thing is go top four. But for me, if we get top four with kind of 70 points and we're still struggling to score and we're still losing 12, because we could have got Champions League football last season with 13 defeats on the board. A lot of it is context and the way you get there as well, because it often shows more progression than just the final position. I'll give you an example. Man United finished sixth last season in the Europa League, and they got they got less points than the Arsenal team that finished eighth a couple of years ago. We get ridiculed for finishing eighth.
Yeah.
So they got more reward for that. But my point is, I need to see Arsenal kick on in terms of goal scoring, in terms of far less defeats, in terms of how they play against the big boys. So when it comes to Bournemouth, are you also looking for that degree of playing good football, scoring goals? Would you say that's Scott Parker's style? That entertaining, because that's what you guys did when you were in the Premier League last time. And I loved Bournemouth. I got a real soft spot for Bournemouth.
There's a terminology that come from the Fulham fans, and that was parkable. Keep
Right.
the ball, slow progression. Sometimes bore teams.
Right.
But I think we're starting to evolve from that. The Villa game was entertaining. Man City, we had to defend a bit more because it was against Man City. In the Championship last season, there was games against Reading, Peterborough, Derby, where we thought we didn't look, it wasn't entertaining. It wasn't end to end. It was just keeping the ball. Whereas I think a bit more of a direct approach, like Eddie did, would have got the results against those teams who were admittedly quite poor. So I think he's evolving. But I think there's still some way to go. And if you compare it to an Eddie team, the Eddie team, always tried to score, more goals. We had that 4-3 win against Liverpool the last time round.
Great day. That was a great day.
Oh yeah, it was a brilliant day. Nathan Ake at the end. Newcastle going up to Newcastle, scoring the winner, the only goal of the game for a Steve Cook header, and of course, the only team we haven't beaten of the top six is Man City, because we did actually get a positive. Sorry to remind you of this one, James, but we did get a very positive result against you guys back in 2018, a 2-1 win at Dean Court. And if my mind serves me correctly, was it was Hector Bellerin, wasn't it, that scored initially for Arsenal? You went 1-0 up, and then it was
Sounds about right. Sounds about right. I'm just having a little look. Oh, that was a bad time. Oh, do you know what? It was Bellerin, you're right. I'd completely and utterly switched off from the team at this point. I mean, look, I'm still a fan, but I'm just having a little look now. I mean, that team was pants. It was bad. Yeah.
And if I'm right in thinking, it was Callum Wilson and then Jordan Ibe of all people that scored the winner.
Yeah, it was. It was Jordan Ibe. You're spot on. Your memory's great. Yeah, Wilson 70 and Ibe 74. Yeah, and I think if my memory serves me right, I think we were 3-0 down to you the year before and pulled it back to 3-3 in kind of the last 10 minutes of the game. So there've been some crackers. There've been some really good games. Between Arsenal and Bournemouth, because it's two teams that, especially during those days, want to just attack. And I sort of think we might see a fairly similar thing this week. I mean, actually, that's my question. Do you think Scott Parker's going to chase Arsenal and want to press and want to go for them and maybe mirror a little bit what Fulham did against Liverpool on the opening day?
I think he'll go a little bit more attacking than he did against Man City. Will he go all out attack? I think, if we did that, Arsenal will still hurt us. I think Arsenal are, rightly so, second in the league at the moment. And, I think if we went all out attack, we could get hurt. But I think I expect us to have a go. The big question I was going to ask actually about Hector Bellerin, because I didn't realise he's still at the club, but doing a little bit more digging, he wants to get out of his contract with Arsenal. What do you make of him? Because he's on a lot of money, but has produced very little, hasn't he?
Yeah, I do feel for him. There's been a lot of criticism around Hector Bellerin, some of it probably fair, some of it over the top. The thing with Bellerin is and I actually remember saying this. I was watching Arsenal with my dad, and I said, he's very reliant on his pace, isn't it? It's kind of just as, and he said, well, yeah, but so what? That's a massive asset. And I guess over the years, that's proven to be as much a problem as it is an asset, because he's still quite quick. But listen, I'm not sitting there with a stopwatch timing him to see if he is actually any slower or not. It might be just a load of rubbish in my head. But when he got this ACL injury against Chelsea and he came back, I really felt I was watching a player that had lost a little bit of mobility, a little bit of confidence in what his body can do. I was speaking to a sports scientist who was saying that it's a real thing that players get long-term injuries, and therefore there's a mental block between what they want to do and what their body can do. Sometimes their body can't do it, or because they're actually too scared to necessarily do it because of injuries in the past or whatever. Again, I'm not saying this is Bellerin. It's just interesting information. And when he came back from the ACL injury, I saw a player that didn't have quite the same pace. And we know that at this level of the Premier League, split seconds, these little percentages are so important. And then when you lose that, you suddenly lose the confidence. You don't press in the same way. You don't try and anticipate and intercept the way you did before. And you don't knock it and run. And these are all things that Bellerin was quite good at, running in beyond. And since then, you've kind of been left with more, okay, so what's your talent on the ball? And in my opinion, it's more limited compared to other players. So I do feel for him, because that's a really bad injury. But at the same time, he's had a lot of time since to try and reintegrate back in the Arsenal team. Obviously, last year he was on loan, and he didn't look at it. So that's kind of the ruthless industry we're in. But he did really well at Betis, apparently. So I think he'll get his move back.
So of course, last time out, you did beat Leicester 4-2 in quite an exciting game as well. So with regards to that, what do you expect Scott Parker maybe to do to counteract what Arsenal have done so far?
Great question. Arsenal made fast starts to most games, actually. When you look at Everton in pre-season, Chelsea and Sevilla in pre-season, they've managed to get a couple, if not more, goals in the first half in those games. Palace, we were only 1-0 up at half-time, but really should have been 2-3 up. And then against Leicester as well, 2-0 up at half-time, but again, could have been 4. I mean, really, it could have been. So I think the thing he'll want to anticipate is that Arsenal will probably come out quickly. I mean, for all I've just said there, Leicester made the better start against us and really could have been 1-0 up had it not been for Ramsdale getting in the way of Fofana's effort. But generally, Arsenal for that first 20 minutes will kind of get on the ball and will find their rhythm, because there's just this natural enthusiasm that comes out of the likes of Zinchenko, Martinelli, Jesus, Saka as well, Odegaard. And so it might be a case of weathering the storm for 20 minutes. But then this is the beauty of football. It is just about putting a ball in the net, but how you go about that is however you want. And Parker might think, rattle them, don't let them settle. And in the games Arsenal struggled with, I mean, you look at last season when we some people use the term bottled. I mean, I guess we bottled top 4, but there were other circumstances and contexts and all that. But when we lost to Newcastle 2-0 in that penultimate game of the season, they just ripped us apart. They just absolutely came at us. And I think if you've got the presence in midfield and you've got the energy and you've got that quality up top, you are best going punch for punch with Arsenal, unsettling them, because it's still a young team. It's still a young Arsenal team that will have some memory of the way they dealt with some of those situations last year. But if Arsenal can get their foot on the ball and start dictating play, the centre-backs, Saliba and Gabriel, don't leave a lot at the back. You might think, well, we'll leave 2 up top and we'll counter, but they're so quick that they do deal with most things. So, look, it's hard when you're saying all this stuff, it can go the opposite way in the match, and then I look a bit silly. But just going off trends, he's going to have to stick to one or the other. Try get through the first 20 minutes and settle in and maybe have Arsenal questioning themselves, or try and really rattle them from the start. Arsenal have proven to fall under both, really. Both can be effective.
And of course, with ourselves, that surprise opening day win, and of course, Man City, hopefully we're planning to get back to winning ways. But we always knew that this run was going to be difficult. We wouldn't have been surprised after 4 games that we had 0 points. So at least we got 3. One of the player I did want to bring up was Nicolas Pepe, who doesn't look like he's very favoured by the club's fans. What do you expect to happen with him?
I actually think a last-minute loan move will come in for him. He's been linked with Nice. been linked with who else was it? It's another club in France, I want to say. Maybe a club in Italy. Anyway, he's been linked with moves away, and quite frankly, the money Arsenal paid for him. Arsenal have been doing this thing where they've basically been writing off a lot of these investments from the past. Aubameyang came for 60 million, went on a free. Lacazette came for 52 million, went on a free. Ozil came for 42 million, went on a free. Mkhitaryan, part of a swap on a big wage, went on a free. Arsenal are basically, Edu has called them investments because he's saying we're investing in losing the money now, but have a better culture and a better squad and a better profile. And I think Nicolas Pepe, in fairness, I don't think falls into the category of players I've mentioned before, because he's still at a good age and he's still clearly very talented, and he could probably, there's value to Pepe. I think for everything that's gone wrong in his time at Arsenal, I also think he's shown a lot of quality. He's a very, very good finisher. I dare say he's one of the most natural finishers at the club, if not the most. In front of goal, you rarely bet against Pepe. The problem is he doesn't get into those areas enough, and he can be very erratic and very kind of just all over the place on the ball sometimes. But then when he's on fire, he can be dangerous and cause problems. I think he'll get his loan move. It's a shame it didn't work, but he's that kind of player as well that if we did keep him for a year, I'd always have that little bit of hope he might do something, because you know the talent's there. I don't expect to see him against Bournemouth. I mean, unless we're losing, then he might call on him. But he doesn't call on him as a defensive option. He doesn't call on him as a starter to rotate. It's very much desperate times, desperate measures. Let's see if Pepe can pull something out.
And of course, Mikel Arteta, has been at the club a couple of seasons now, and I think he's done a very, very good job of Arsenal fans thinking that he is the new Arsene Wenger. Because let's be fair, there was a lot of criticism for Wenger, even though he'd done an outstanding job. And we had Vince Bartram on the show here, and Vince went through it, told us the day that Wenger walked through the door, and this very, very posh man come in and change the whole philosophy at Arsenal. A bit of a double-sided question. So, do you think Arteta's on his way to what Wenger did? And what do you think went wrong during Wenger's tenure at the club?
Let's start with that. Okay, let's start with that second one. With Wenger, and the way it ended was football was moving on. And I actually think Wenger could still have been a manager that inspired greatness out of a team. And actually, on a few occasions, nearly built title-winning sides. Now, this might be unpopular for viewers watching this, but 07-08, when Eduardo broke his leg, I really think Arsenal were on for the title and probably should have won in that year. I think the team was absolutely rocked by what happened with that injury. 13-14, when Aaron Ramsey was scoring goal after goal, we won the FA Cup that year, and we were I think we went to Anfield and lost 5-1. That's really what derailed us. But again, for a lot of that season, we were brilliant, but injuries kicked in. I think Cazorla got injured, Cazorla, and a few. And I actually think Arsenal could have done something that year, maybe. And listen, these teams don't compare to the ones that we see winning the title now. But the Premier League level wasn't quite the same for a few years back then. We're talking sort of post-Fergie, and Pellegrini and Mourinho had one great year, then left, and Poch under Tottenham were kind of flattering to deceive, getting top four but not winning trophies, all that. Got to get that in. I'm an Arsenal fan. So I think there's an opportunity there in 15-16 when Leicester won it. Again, people always talk about the title race between Leicester and Tottenham, but for most of that season, it was Arsenal who were in the driving seat and keeping pace with Leicester. Tottenham basically put together a really great run and found themselves at the top end with Leicester towards the end, and then fell away and we finished second. Again, that was another year Arsenal really could have done something quite special. And Wenger had the ability to still build very good sides, entertain and be brilliant. But I think football moved on. I think the likes of Klopp were deploying a high press, and Guardiola was evolving tactically and in terms of the depth, the knowledge and information players were taking on, and things moved beyond Wenger. And forget even just that, Wenger moved away from what made him so loved. That game you just mentioned, I've got it here, that Bournemouth game, we lost 2-1, right? So listen to this team. Petr Cech in goal, right? Wasn't good enough for Chelsea, we pick him up. Back three of Chambers, Mustafi and Holding. Bellerin, Wilshere, Xhaka, Maitland-Niles as the three. Iwobi, Welbeck, Lacazette. I mean, that doesn't sound Arsenal. That doesn't scream Arsenal. Where's your Rosicky, your Hleb? Where's your Arshavin, your Nasri, your Fabregas? Okay, you got Wilshere in there, but where are these players that were just such a joy to watch? I'm looking at the bench. There's nothing there. And I think that's where ultimately it went wrong, because Arsenal fans, I think, quietly did enjoy being entertained. Okay, we weren't as competitive, but wow, were we brilliant to watch, and you love the team, but he moved so far away from that. And I think that was as big a part of it as any. And in terms of the Arteta question, it's so early to know, because there's a lot to be impressed about with Arteta. Won an FA Cup within 6 months. Listen, there's a lot of managers that don't get over the line who are brilliant. So massive credit to him. And also you can point to things he did tactically that earned him that. It wasn't a fluke. It wasn't luck. So that was great. And then the second thing is the rebuild he's overseeing at Arsenal. Now, whether now he's got all his ingredients, he can make us a real side. Evidence at the start of this season looks good, but there's a long way to go. We have to see. But the rebuild, no one can deny. And I almost think if things were to go wrong and Arteta were to move on from this job, whoever picks it up, whether it's a Graham Potter or who else, would have a really great group to work from, in terms of some good depth in most positions, some real quality, a team that's going in the right direction in terms of age and heading towards their potential, good attitude, good wage bill, that kind of a good support from the fans, that kind of stuff. I think it would be left in a much better place. Arsenal are in a far better position now than they were when Arteta took over. And so you've got to say he's doing a good job. But there are certain demands and there are certain expectations that come with being manager of Arsenal. And unfortunately, it's not really so much a question about whether he's heading in the right direction. I think most agree he is. It's just about whether he's getting there quickly enough, because football doesn't wait. So sorry for the very, very, very long-winded answer, but hopefully I've captured it all there.
No, to be honest, that makes perfect sense. And, one thing I always thought with Arsene Wenger was when he first started out at Arsenal is that he revolutionized the game. And a lot of managers, a lot of clubs now have basically taken what Wenger did at Arsenal and just replicated that. So I think that's why he did so well initially. And of course, the invincible season as well. That was quite special, wasn't it?
Yeah, and look, I'll be really honest now. I was a little too young to really remember it. So I very much am the fan that doesn't quite know the feeling of winning a Premier League title. But being the young fan, you're watching all sorts of DVDs and highlights and clips and everything, and you know about those players like you were there. And Arsenal have had some great moments, and I think that's why there's a sense of expectation that is, okay, you're not going to win every year, and Invincibles is a once in a lifetime thing, but you can and should, be aspiring to be challenging with those big guys. For a long time we weren't. Seems like the mentality has shifted in that we are spending big money and we are trying to build a competitive side, and Arteta says all the right things, but yeah, we'll see. We will see. Football can go very wrong very quickly. It was only a year ago that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and Man United had just finished second. They got to Europa League final that they probably should have won. And they just signed Varane, Sancho and Ronaldo. And you're looking at it thinking, well, who on earth is going to stop them? 12 months on, 4 months on from that, they were a shambles, an absolute shambles. So I try to reserve too much judgment. When I see Arsenal going into March, 10 points off the top, so you're not miles off them. You're kind of in touch, but in that top four race, 5 to 10 points off the top, playing some great football, one of the top scorers in the league, then I'll start thinking, okay, this has really come full circle the way I want it to. We'll see if Arteta gets there. It is looking good. I know I sound like I'm playing it all down, but that's more to protect myself, because I think any neutral would look at what's going on and say, whether you believe in Arteta or not, you'd say it's looking pretty bloody good.
Yeah, definitely. And it's an exciting squad that he's built there, like you say. And I think his signings have been sensible as well. During the summer. So, hopefully, fingers crossed, he can go from strength to strength. In fact, this is the penultimate question this week. How do you reckon it's going to go at Dean Court on Saturday?
So, well, there's it now, Wednesday. So
Yeah.
I watched the highlights of the Bournemouth Villa game. Was it 1 or 2 goals from set pieces? I'm trying to remember. It was 1. Was it a second goal
Yeah.
from a set piece? I can't
Yeah.
remember. Yeah. And I've always liked Bournemouth. I think I never write anyone off, especially when we're away from home. But I think it might be one of those one or 2 nils for the Arsenal where it's not comfortable, but
Hmm.
maybe we just get enough over the line. And I guess it goes back to that question, will Scott Parker compromise? And if he does, if he compromises, because Crystal Palace's game plan against us, it wasn't that bad. A lot of people were saying, why aren't they pressing you like they did back in April when they beat us 3-0? But they didn't have quite the pre-season prep they'd have wanted for that, and they didn't have Conor Gallagher anymore. So actually, they had to approach it slightly differently. And what they did is they contained us to just the one lead and then had a few chances to get back into it.
Yeah.
I think if Bournemouth deploy something like that, there's a chance it could be a very tight game. But I've got to back the team because they are looking good and they've spent money, and I've got to have that level of expectation for them. So I'm going to say 2-0 Arsenal, but that's by no means me saying that I'm expecting anything easy. What about you, Craig? Where are you with it?
Do you know what? I've got 2 versions in my. Well, one's from my heart, one's from my head.
Yeah, head and
So
heart.
we'll go with the head first, and I think it'll be 2-1 Arsenal. I think you are one of the top 6. You probably got a little bit too much, for us. I think the signings, I think Jesus is, quality. He will. I, I can't see him not scoring. Um, I think we'll still grab one though. I think we'll still grab one.
I
The
wouldn't just.
heart says 2-1 in our
Yeah,
favour.
yeah. Fair enough. Listen, all these sides in the Premier League, it's so hard. You want to address your mentality to be more like, listen, expect Arsenal to win because we've spent more money and blah 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 blah. Go get the job done. But I just don't ever think it's that easy. I just think it takes for one shaky moment from Ramsdale or one freak goal, and suddenly it all changes, it all mixes up, and you beat Villa. Villa are a good side, and they showed that in the Everton game actually that they actually are quite decent. There was all this talk around Tyrone Mings and Gerrard, but no, I think them beating Everton the way they did, okay, it wasn't overly convincing, but they were pretty good. Showed that Bournemouth beat a good Villa side. This isn't, we rocked up and got lucky playing some team that are in a disarray a bit. No, you beat a very good Villa side, and I think your home ground will be a tough place to go for most, as it was in the league a couple of years ago. You beat some real sides, when you're in the Premier League the first time. So listen, I'm not expecting anything easy, but I want Arsenal to jump on the fact that Bournemouth will now be over the hole. We're back in the Premier League, yay! They'll be over that because they've had a home and away game. Cool. So there's not going to be that extra kind of motivation. It's a 5:30 p.m. on a Saturday. Hopefully, Arsenal just go and do the business, but I'm always apprehensive, always, and I've got a lot of time and respect for Bournemouth. So we'll see. But yeah. Hopefully the mentality is right. Hopefully the approach is right, and we don't get there all complacent, thinking, "Oh, we'll be fine." That's the
Seeing
biggest
as
thing.
you brought him up, actually, we might as well have a quick chat about
Yeah,
Aaron Ramsdale.
yeah,
And
of course, former Bournemouth.
yeah, former Bournemouth goalkeeper. He had that final season we were in the Premier League last time round. He had a fantastic season.
Yeah,
Did everything he possibly could. Went to Sheffield United, got relegated a second time, and then ended up at Arsenal and got himself into the England team. He is, the Arsenal goalkeeper now. He's the number 1.
yeah.
And, are you impressed with him? And also, secondly, do you think he really should be England number 1? Because I've got my opinions about it.
I think he should be England's number 1. That's not to say he's perfect. It's that I'm not Jordan Pickford's biggest fan at all.
Mhm.
Um, but he's been good. He's been very good for us. And the thing that goes under the radars is distribution. And what it's allowing Arsenal to do is actually get higher up the pitch and stretch it out and find more space. And he's picking it. What was distribution something you noticed in Ramsdale when you guys had him?
Yeah.
Really, that's interesting. So was it in terms of his kicks, in terms of passing short into midfield? I mean, because it was never something on our radar until we were linked with him. We thought he must be on the good on the ball. And then a few clips did the rounds, and I hadn't even realised that he was this cultured with the ball at his feet.
Yeah, he does seem confident. He does seem confident. You know, there is a mistake in him every now and again, but you know, he did really, really well. Mark Travers beforehand, you know,
Yeah,
we actually beat that lot just down the road from you in North London. You know,
I remember that.
I shan't mention their name. I
Was
shan't
that the
mention their
Nathan
name.
Ake goal in like the
It
90th
was.
minute or something? Yeah,
Yeah, I thought you'd enjoy that one more than
yeah,
the
yeah. That was good
2-1.
fun.
But Mark Travers played that game and had an absolute storming performance. And then he lost his place. We thought, well, Mark Travers will be in for the following season. And Aaron Ramsdale was. He was on loan at Wimbledon that year, and you know, really shone, really shone. And you know, it looked that he was a lot more comfortable with the ball at
Yeah.
his feet. You know, he's big, he's solid. I think he should be England number one. You know, and to be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of Pickford either, but
Mhm.
personally, I think he's the one that really stands out for me. And you
He's
know,
got he can be a bit rash, and that's
yeah,
part of his game to be off his line and claim crosses and play eccentric darting balls over the top. He likes to be involved, but I think that's all part of it. That's all part of what makes him good as well as sometimes shaky. But we like him a lot, like we do, and there's the old question here, but there is over all these players because they're young and they haven't in the great history of Arsenal. They haven't proven anything yet. So
yeah,
there's a microscope in all these players, but we like him a lot. We really do. And he's coming across really well in the All or Nothing documentary, just in terms of how much he cares and how much pressure he puts on himself. So yeah, we like him, and obviously he did well at Bournemouth and Wimbledon before that, and then obviously Sheffield United. So he's had a very good education. He's been around different leagues, different levels, and teams that play very different ways. And I think you can see that kind of mix in his game at Arsenal, where his distribution is great because we need it to be, but he also knows how to defend from crosses and command his area. Big thing you need to do as well to survive in the Premier League and whatever division he's playing in. So, yeah, we're a big fan of him, but he's got to be England's number one.
yeah. I'm delighted to actually see him doing so well at Arsenal.
Yeah,
Final question, then. I've been looking forward to asking this.
yeah,
So 7:30 p.m. on Saturday, and my heart was right, and we've got the 3 points.
yeah.
What is going to be Arsenal Fan TV's reaction to that?
I mean, I don't know how everyone else is going to react, but from my perspective, I've sort of promised myself after seeing the early performances and the way we've been quite proactive in the transfer market and taken pre-season seriously. It all comes down to the manner of the defeat. If Arsenal don't look up for it, if they look complacent, that's unacceptable. But you know what? If Bournemouth defend really well, play some brilliant football to create fashion chances, there's a little bit of bad luck maybe. Things happen in football. Liverpool were on for going the season unbeaten and lost 3-0 at Watford. But you don't fixate on it because they ended up then winning, most of those games after that and lifting the titles. So, it's one of these things where it's all about the context around the result. But either way, I do want to take what they've been doing the last couple of months as credit in the bank and say, listen, I know you're trying to do the right things. And sometimes you can be critical without having to pull up the pass. So Arsenal could lose this game, and it doesn't mean Arsenal have done anything wrong in terms of their preparation or signings or whatever. It just means they got whatever they got wrong on the day. So scrutinise it accordingly. That would be my thing. But, it's a long season. Arsenal fans really want a momentum. They really want to start this game with like 5 wins in a row, because with all the respect in the world, the feeling is Arsenal should be winning these games, but with all the talent in the Premier League, who should do anything? So I think that pressure's there, but really it's just go out, play your football, entertain, and that should be enough. And if it's not, then you have a look at it in the post-mortem. But there's no need to, I don't know. Hopefully, there's no need to go overboard come this Saturday. But I'm touching wood as I say it, because it doesn't take a lot in football to turn things around. As I mentioned with Man United.
Well, I'm hoping that you'll be praising Bournemouth on the channel on Saturday evening, but
I've no doubt we probably will be in some
or
capacity.
or really ripping into Arsenal because you've let us get the 3 points. But honestly, you guys do, your channel is brilliant. I've
Thank you, Craig.
subscribed to it for years, and what you all do is entertaining. Sometimes I guess it's a difficult watch, isn't it, for Arsenal fans, because the frustration and the manner of some of the defeats in the past, but I'm sure it's going to be happier times.
When it's going that bad, I don't even like being a part of it. I just want to just pretend and forget and whatever. But that's the lows make the highs even higher. So that's what you do. You go through the bad with the team, and you enjoy That's why we can enjoy this moment. 2 wins on the bounce, a good preseason, signings in. They look brilliant because we had to with Arteta in this group, we had to endure the 1 win in 10 or whatever that came 2 years ago. So that's football. That is football.
Yeah, definitely. Well, hopefully, just for this Saturday, a fallout on Arsenal Fan TV. However, after that, I wish you the very best, and hopefully lots of happier faces. But yeah, this week, it'll be a little bit more entertaining if you're not so happy.
I can understand that. Well, I appreciate Craig. Thank you so much for having me on the channel. I really appreciate it. And likewise, I sort of wish all the luck to Bournemouth through the season. I've got no doubts that you guys will be entertained as well. And I think Scott Parker. Listen, this is a guy who has been relegated, promoted, and then promoted again. So there's some real success on his CV already, and I think he'll be getting it right slowly, and he'll slowly be getting there. So we'll see. We'll see. I'll be very honest. I have my fears for Bournemouth this season, but at the same time, would I be walking away surprised if they finish 15th, 16th? Not particularly, because history has taught us a lot. So just be rubbish on Saturday and then have a great season.
It's just a role reversal, isn't it? But
exactly.
It's been an absolute pleasure, James, and thank you so much.
You,
and all the best for the rest of the season.
And you. Thank you very much, mate.
Cool. Thanks, mate. And thank you, everybody, for joining me on this special show. Please do remember to hit the like, the subscribe, and the bell button below to be alerted to any new videos we do here on Up the Cherries in all departments. Please do also check out our recent interviews. We've had Vince Bartram, of course, Arsenal goalkeeper, who was the understudy to David Seaman. We also have had Sean Teal. We've had Harry Redknapp's season preview show. We did have a Harry Redknapp interview from quite some time ago. We've got Steve Cook, of course, now of Nottingham Forest, Steve Fletcher, loads more as well. So please remember to hit the like, the subscribe, and the bell button below to be alerted to any new videos we do here on the channel. Also, you do keep your eyes peeled for that video. It is going to be brilliant, and a joy to do. And yeah, do remember to subscribe to Arsenal Fan TV. It's one of my favourite YouTube channels out there. The work they all do is brilliant. So it's been an absolute pleasure. But until next show, up the cherries, and I'll see you then.